Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Malair. Malair used to be an important sorcerer in charge of protecting the earth against magical threats. One day, he decided to try a bit of evil magic just to know what it felt like. It devoured him and made him evil. Malair is a magic monster, therefore his weakness is nature. Here we have him as a child, as a teenager, as an adult. Malair is part of the superhero collection in Monster Legends, well, except he's more of a super villain. But anyways, let's get into his stats. Malair boasts an impressive power of 3,553. This is actually the second highest power of all the magic legendary monsters. In fact, it's even greater than the VIP monster Scar the Outcast. And this power is second only to Worker Hulk, who's also a magic monster, except that monster has a really low speed, like 2,100, so many people don't even really consider him a usable monster, thus making Malair the most powerful usable magic monster. Malair's life is 27,445, and as of the time I'm recording this video, there are 22 magic legendary monsters, so this life puts him in 13th place. And in fact, which means if you're watching this analysis in the future, you can still imagine his life is going to be rather average for all magic monsters. And his speed is 3,454, which makes him tied for 8th place, along with monsters like Singularis, General Shannara, and Violet. So although he doesn't necessarily have the fastest speed, he does have a fast enough speed to combat some of the monsters you'll often face against, monsters like Violet, monsters like Egg Eater, and monsters like White Panda. And lastly, his trait is immune to possession, which is an amazing trait to have. Many magic monsters tend to dish out possession abilities, and fortunately Malair is immune to all of them. I should note however that Galante, who has a 100% stamina drain skill, Toymaster, who has a stun and a freeze skill, and Uru has a stun skill, they're all faster than Malair, so in a battle against them, you could run into some problems. However, jumping back to Malair's power, 3,553, this indicates that he's going to be an attacker. So now let's jump to his default and special skills to see how powerful he can be. By the Shades of Alastor. Deals low physical damage, 25 damage to a single enemy, costing 13 stamina with no cooldown. By the Chains of Asaku, deals low magic damage, 30 damage to a single enemy, costs 14 stamina with no cooldown. Other than the fascinating names of these two default skills, there's nothing particularly special about them, so we're gonna move on. By the Power of Hoggoth, deals very heavy magic damage to all enemies, so it's an AoE, which means it attacks multiple enemies, and it deals 80 damage. So this ultimate attack is pretty straightforward. It doesn't deal any sort of special effect, it doesn't do anything else other than just deal massive damage. And really it does, 80 damage is a lot. Normally ultimate attacks would deal 60, 65, or 70, but here we have a monster that does an 80 damage AoE. Combined with this monster's incredible strength, combined with strength runes, this ultimate attack is insanely good. But like usual, my biggest criticism is that it deals elemental damage, in this case magic damage, as opposed to just dealing special damage. Meaning if you're using this monster in Team Wars, it won't be as effective when you use this attack against a magic monster. Nonetheless, it's still a really good, powerful ultimate attack, so now let's move on to Skills Group 1. By the Ageless Beherit, deals moderate special damage, 50% chance of dazing the target. It targets a single enemy with 35 damage, costing 21 stamina, and having no cooldown. So I imagine by now most of you already know my take on skills that have a 50% chance to do anything. Skills like this, they really aren't worth running. I might give an exception if it's a really good skill and it's a 50% AoE, but this skill you don't need to run. Next we have a skill called By the Sons of Deva. Deals low magic damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE dealing 35 damage, even though it says low, it still says here it's equivalent to 35 damage, and it costs 24 stamina and it has a 2-turn cooldown. So this is interesting. This is normally a skill you'd see in Skills Group 2, sometimes in Skills Group 3. In fact, this is what other monsters would have in Skills Group 2 or 3. So even though this is a Skills Group 1 skill, it's a pretty good skill. However, Malair has other really good skills in Skills Group 2 and 3, which means you won't be needing to run this skill. And last, we have a skill called By the Vapors of Malthus. Deals moderate magic damage, 50% chance of applying damage reduction. It deals 35 damage to a single enemy, costing you 25 stamina, and it has no cooldown. So like the previous skill, 50% chance of applying anything, in this case damage reduction, is not worth using. It has such a low damage output, considering this monster is an attacker, you really don't need to run anything from Skills Group 1. So starting things off in Skills Group 2, we have an attack called By the Winds of Morax. Deals moderate special damage, removes 50% of stamina from enemy, and may apply damage reduction to target. Requires cooldown. So it deals 45 damage to a single enemy, costing you 28 stamina, and it only has a 1-turn cooldown. Now there's two really good things I like about this skill. The first being that it deals special damage as opposed to magic damage, which gives you an advantage if you use this monster in Team Wars. You won't need to worry about using a magic attack on a magic monster. And the second thing I like about this skill is that it removes 50% of stamina from the enemy. And if that enemy monster already used some sort of AoE, which is normally like 30 plus stamina, at best they'll be able to use one more attack. So this skill isn't really an attacker skill, it's more of a control skill. It's a skill that's there just in case you need it, just in case you need to drain your enemy's stamina, which will prevent them from attacking you, from immobilizing you, from finishing you off. You have it just in case you need it. You have the ability to control the outcome of the game. On top of that, you also apply damage reduction, which can be pretty good. So overall, I do like this skill, and this is a skill I actually do recommend running. You never know when that 50% stamina drain can come in handy. Next, we have a skill called By the Demons of Rakshasa. Deals moderate magic damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, requires cooldown. It's an AoE dealing 35 damage, costing you 33 stamina with a 3-turn cooldown, which is kind of funny because if you compare this to the previous skill from Skills Group 1, By the Sons of Deva, they do the exact same thing, except your Skills Group 1 skill is a lot better. So if you really wanted to run this skill, you're better off going with the Skills Group 1. It costs less stamina, it also has a lower cooldown. But like I mentioned with the previous skill, you really don't need AoE Nightmares, so you don't need to run this skill at all. Last on Skills Group 2, we have By the Images of Surgat. Deals moderate magic damage, may apply 2 random negative effects to target, requires cooldown. It deals 45 damage to a single enemy, it costs you 30 stamina, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. And this is another skill I do recommend running. These are all the different negative effects you can actually apply, and you get to apply 2 of them, 2 random negative effects. Now, just like with Winds of Morax, you never know when that 50% stamina can come in handy, you never know when those 2 random negative effects can come in handy. Malair has the stats to be one of the best magic attackers in the game. But what I like even more about him is that Social Point didn't just make him a pure attacker, they actually gave him some control skills. They gave him the stamina drain. They gave him the skill that gives negative effects, which can apply stun, freeze, drain stamina, rebooted, all these different negative effects. So because of that, I really do enjoy using Malair. Don't think that he's just a pure attacker, he actually does have some control skills. So now we're gonna move down to Skills Group 3. In Skills Group 3, we have an attack called By the Flames of Vasago. Deals heavy special damage, steals 50% life of damage dealt to target, requires cooldown. It deals 60 damage to a single enemy, it costs 28 stamina, and it only has a 1-turn cooldown. And in my opinion, this is probably the best skill that Malair has, and this is a skill that qualifies him to be a really good attacker. So let's break down why this skill is so good. First of all, it deals special damage, and you guys know my take on special damage. It's perfect for team wars, it's perfect for taking out the enemy magic monster. But if that wasn't enough, it's a special damage skill that is 60 damage. Again, you combine that with this monster's incredible power, and you combine that with strength runes, this is going to deal massive damage. But not only that, this monster is able to heal himself. He steals 50% life of the damage dealt to the target. For example, if this monster was to dish out 30k damage, he would recover 15k in life, which is amazing. And it doesn't matter if you're attacking another magic monster, again, because it's a special base skill and not a magic base skill. And on top of that, it only has a 1-turn cooldown, which means after you use this skill, you can use a skill like Images of Surgat or Winds of Morax, and then on the following turn, you can go back to Flames and recover more life in case you need it, and at the same time deal massive damage. It also only costs you 28 stamina, which isn't that bad. So By the Flames of Vasago, a really good skill to have. And next we have a skill called By the Fangs of Esbeth. Deals moderate magic damage to all enemies, may apply a random negative effect to all targets, requires cooldown. 35 damage AoE, costs you 28 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. And I gotta say, for an AoE, that's a pretty low cooldown. But anyways, this applies 1 random negative effect to all enemies, and it's a pretty good skill to start off with. You never know where you can land. By no means is this skill meant to be an immobilizing skill. Do not use all speedruns on this monster and try to make him an immobilizer, it's not gonna work. This skill is really there just to test your luck, because again, you never know when it can come in handy. And again, that's what I really like about Malair. He has control skills, he's not just a pure attacker. He doesn't have a 45 damage AoE like other attackers, but he does offer an impressive power with some pretty impressive skills. And last we have By the Omnipotent Zagon. Deals moderate magic damage, may make target bleed, requires cooldown. 55 damage to a single enemy, costing you 34 stamina, and has a 1-turn cooldown. Oddly enough, this single enemy skill has a higher stamina cost, 34, than an AoE that's only 28. But anyway, a lot of people love this skill because it gives bleed, and currently no one in the game is immune to bleed. Now bleed essentially does the same thing as poison. Damage is reduced and life is reduced. And although a lot of people like to use the skill, I'll admit it's not really one of my favorite skills, at least not to run on Malair. But it's ultimately going to be up to you guys to decide what skills you want to run. There's really only 3 skills I would say for sure you should run on this monster. The first of which is By the Flames of Vasago. High damage output, low stamina cost, low cooldown period. It's a good skill. And the other 2 skills would be By the Winds of Morax and By the Images of Surgat. Then the final skill is really going to differ on a player to player basis. You could run By the Fangs of Esbeth, or you could run By the Omnipotent Zagon. So I already explained why running Flames is good, and Winds of Morax I also explained it. 50% stamina drain, you never know when that can come in handy. 2 negative effects means you can land an immobilizing skill, you can land a damage over time skill that could win you the game. Both of these skills can prove to be incredibly beneficial to you. So then the question is, which of these skills do you want to run? I personally recommend running By the Fangs of Esbeth, and that's just because it's an AoE random negative effect skill. You never know what you can land. Similar to the skills from Skills Group 2, you never know when this can come in handy. By the Omnipotent Zagon on the other hand friend is more of an attacker based skill. It's pretty straightforward, 55 damage output, and it gives bleeding. And honestly, I can see why this skill may be more attractive to people. In fact, I've even seen people run all of skills group 3 and then either Morax or Surgat. At the end of the day, you should really just run what you think will be better. You don't necessarily have to listen to me. But anyways, when picking skills, you have to think about different scenarios. You have to think about what is going to happen most often. For example, if you're using this monster in Team Wars, do you want to start off with an AoE by the Fangs of Esbeth? Is it worth it to use this skill? Maybe if the enemy has a common, uncommon, or rare, and you have high enough level strength runes, maybe you'd be able to take out the enemy monster and then you can land 2 effects on the other 2 enemies. Maybe it could come in handy. Or would you rather use by the Flames of Asago? And even though you're not needing to recover life, you can still potentially take out one of the enemy monsters with this skill. And would that be more to your benefit? And if you imagine that you're going to start off the game by using by the Flames of Asago more often than you would the AoE, maybe it's not even worth running the AoE. Unless you really think you can benefit from using by the Fangs of Esbeth on 2 enemy monsters. Because in my opinion, when there's only 2 enemy monsters, I really don't think an AoE is necessary. I think it's better just to go for 1 enemy, just target one of them and try to take out that monster. In which case it'd be to your benefit to run by the Omnipotent Zagon because it's 55 damage and the enemy will get bleed. Or for example, if you start off the game by using by the Flames of Asago and you manage to take out one of the enemy monsters, on your following turn, it might be more useful to use by the Images of Surgat and apply 2 random negative effects. That means that on your 3rd turn by Malair, it's really useless to have an AoE skill. You're not going to be using it. So I would say only run the AoE skill if you know for sure you're going to be starting off most of your games using the AoE. If you don't think that's the case, then I would just run the Omnipotent Zagon. But like I said earlier, you should really just run whatever skill you think would benefit you more. You don't necessarily need to listen to this analysis. It's really meant as a guide. By no means am I saying that I'm 100% correct. And with all of that being said, that concludes my analysis on Malair. I want to thank everyone who made it to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for your support. And like always, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think Malair is a good monster? Do you think he's not so good? Whatever opinion you have on Malair, make sure to write it below in the comments. Also, make sure to comment what monster you want me to analyze next. And I hope that everyone has a good day. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.